Every time you're driving along and you see a church that looks very familiar, well, if you check into the history of it, a lot of the times you'll find the name Father Philip Rue associated with that church. He was a very motivated individual, as you might guess by the design of the building and the adjacent grotto, and as well he's credited with over 40 works in Canada. He was a self-taught architect. He didn't have any formal training in architecture. He was just very well read, and as I mentioned, he was obviously a very motivated individual, because you look at some of his works and you imagine that, how would you even go about designing a place like this? Well, he was, like I say, obviously quite an intelligent fellow. Now, he was originally a Roman Catholic priest from Alsace-Lorraine, but due to the shortage of Ukrainian Catholic missionaries in Canada, he was asked to convert to the Eastern Rite. So he was sent to the Ukraine for several years, where he learned the language, and then he migrated to Canada. How he ended up in Cooks Creek, the faithful of the area had heard of Father Rue's prowess as an architect and had petitioned to have him come to Cooks Creek to help build a new church. The bishop sent him out here to have a look. His exact words were, "What a God-forsaken place this is." Now, he wrote back to the bishop, "Are you sure this is what you want me to do?" And the bishop replied, "Yes, this is where you will serve." So he said it was not his will that he be in Cooks Creek, but it is the will that I be here, so I shall serve. Now, the interesting thing is that was in 1930 that he arrived and they started building the church, and he was the resident priest until 1962 when he passed away. So we presume that the place kind of grew on him a little bit. Some considered him, quite gruff and quite forward and abrupt. But if you look at any project of a great scale, usually the person that's driving the project has to be a very take charge individual. So for some, he might have been a little on the rough side. Imagine trying to get a group of volunteers moving in a direction on a project, not only such a large project, but for such a long time. We're talking 22 years. If you talk to the old-timers of the area, and my father, and even today I was talking with him, and he was telling stories of when he was 14 years old, helping to build the church, and how Father Rue would be pitching in, and Father Rue's hands were much rougher than any of the other laborers, because he was always a very hands-on laborer. He didn't supervise the job just. He also was involved with, the pitching and the throwing of whatever materials were required. He had his lighter moments as well, and he, to put it bluntly, had some of the best moonshine in the area, and he was known for it. So quite a character when you get right down to it. It started in 1930, and there literally was no work to be found in the Depression. They would donate their labor to the church, and that was how the church was constructed. Another interesting note was there was no machinery allowed in the building of the church, not even a cement mixer. So when you look at everything in the church and imagine how could that be built by hand, well, that's exactly how it was built. Father was very strict that it be built by the hand of man for the glory of God. So that was your hammer and a nail, shovel and a pail was the tools of the trade. There was a lot of innovative thinking when the structure was being built, how to make it look like marble and the pillars outside and all that. And a lot of it was local materials they were able to come up with, and some very clever work in the design of it. He realized not to overstep your bounds, because in his own writings it was slow and sure, better than speedy and bankrupt. Especially at that time when resources were strained, money-wise and manpower-wise, he worked with what was available, and he raised what was needed by whatever means, be it dances, bingos, you name it. He raised funds, and he built as the funds were available. He said there would be no debt incurred in the building of the church, and they never did. Now, it took 22 years to build. It was completed in 1952, and then it was consecrated in 1954. and dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary.